Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery, and the bin that I've got in my sights today is my oldest worm bin. I'm kind of winging it because I didn't bring any notes to help me with the numbers, but I think that the system's age is 245 days. It's a little bit unusual because I started the migration of the worms out of the finished compost 75 days ago, maybe? At least 70 days ago, I believe. And as I usually do, I'll set up the feeding area or the migration area with plastic to keep the moisture that was in there circulating, keep things nice and damp. Whereas on the side where the finished castings are, I'll cover in a way that it allows for drying to occur. And I think for all intensive purposes, we've already determined that the castings have dried to the point where it probably could be screened, or it was close to that, I believe. But I think it was also to the point where all of the worms had moved out. And I think there was also that last consideration of whether all the cocoons in the material had hatched and all the babies had also moved out. So we're kind of doing a little test drive of almost as if this was a little bit of a miniature sort of continuous flow system, or maybe like a wedge pattern if you want to think of it that way. But I think we're going to check in on it since it's been 10 days since we last did. And it's been 4 weeks since that last major piece of food that I got was a big, huge carrot. Has been in there. Whether it's still there as leftovers, I don't know. But we'll find out soon because we're going to get it up on the bench and check it out. Now, unfortunately, I've been dealing with a little bit of an issue down here with these little flying insects, these gnats. And I started transitioning over from using the diatomaceous earth, sprinkling that stuff, the powder, out onto the top coverings and letting the stuff, nab the flying insects once they walk into this stuff. But then a couple weeks ago, I decided I was going to transition away from using this stuff as the countermeasure against the flying insects, and we transitioned over to something that tries to deal with them a slightly different way. It's that the mosquito dunks, which brings into the system a type of bacteria that interferes with the development of the larva. So these flying insects will try to lay their eggs. I mean, the eggs will do fine and they will hatch, but the larva will never be able to transform beyond the larval stage into the fly stage. So it gets them at that stage. It also looks like we've got some dead flying insects down here on this coffee filter too. It's funny because when we first started feeding this system with the intention of trying to migrate the worms out of here, I don't think there was any idea of trying to evaluate or test drive this concept of having sort of a wedged or continuous flow system. There was clearly meant to be a dividing line here, and you can even see some artifacts of that here. This piece of cardboard once it's very narrow at this point, hardly anything left of it. It was a solid piece of cardboard this big, going straight down into the material, delineating where the finished castings were and where the horizontal migration feeding zone was. At this point, you would pick up material from here and pick up material here from here. I don't think you'd be able to find much difference because this horizontal migration feeding zone started out way the heck over here and has continually grown a little bit, but in a way that we just kept nudging everything over in this direction, a little different from what I started doing here. So what we would normally do, and I guess what we'll do today, is give this whole thing a little bit more of a nudge with the intention of continuing to increase the real estate over on this side for these little guys, and putting the freshest, newest stuff out on this edge for them, and having all of this, most heavily seasoned stuff for them to, hang out in and live in at this point. So I guess, if we wanted to keep seeing roughly where the finished casting collection was before we started trying to migrate the worms out, it would be roughly there. But like I said, at this point, you can almost do away with that because the whole concept of continuous is that you're constantly moving the line. You're constantly, at some point deciding that the material over here is good, you're going to take it, use it for gardening, give it to the plants. And as you continue making space on this edge of the bin, it allows for that ongoing nudging of the stuff over in this direction. So now what are we seeing here? Do we have a couple rogue worms that have wandered back out into the finished compost despite the Eden that we've laid out for them here? The delicious foods, the comfortable bedding. Who are these ungrateful creatures? These worms. Do I sound a little high and mighty there? That is always kind of one of my things that makes me wonder. It's like, what the heck's preventing these worms from just cruising right back into the finished castings? And usually I'd like to think that it's me successfully allowing the material to dry out to the point where the worms would just want to have nothing to do with this material anymore. But this evidently speaks to the fact that it's not really quite there yet. If in fact you really wanted to treat this as a kind of a purist migration, and this was at some point just going to be hauled out as castings, which is really what's going to happen here anyway. At some point soon, probably very soon, because my buddy was actually just over here earlier today asking me, "Hey, got any more castings?" And it's the castings that are in here that I imagined giving to him, and he'll probably need them soon. We're now past the final frost date for my grow zone. Technically, I could be planting my garden too, but I'm kind of dragging my feet. Hopefully, I'll be ready for that soon. But I think we only saw a couple worms hanging out in this stuff. It does seem like this material is certainly drying very nicely. Look how, easily it crumbles. It is in big chunks, but as soon as you press it a little bit, it flakes right apart into little pieces. So it's just never been broken up or broken down to that up, down, broken up. It's not been broken up that way. It's already broken down. It's just not broken up. So it just seems like it would only be a matter of kind of unclumping it with a few little, presses of any of these little large chunks. They all seem to just flake into little bits, and then you could probably jostle the stuff through a screen at some point. And here we got a little itsy bitsy worm. Kind of the whole reason we've been keeping it in this configuration in the first place was that, in some situations we would, haul out these finished castings, ensuring that there's no contact between these castings and the relocated adults that have been taken out already. And then it really becomes kind of more of a purist style nursery where it's just the cocoons left alone to hatch, and then a whole bunch of immature worms that just don't have the capability yet at their young age to even make new cocoons. So the idea there, again, give time for the cocoons to hatch, move those babies out before they can lay out new cocoons of their own, and then that material is pretty much cleansed of any potential of future baby worms coming out of the blue anymore. So geez, I spent a good amount of time on this. I think we're done aerating the beautiful castings. It's just that when you start picking up large chunks of the stuff and kind of busting it up and it all crumbles so readily, it's just nice to see, nice to see really good results with the castings in here. And I guess the other thing that's just giving me a little bit of sense that it might be worthwhile to go a little bit longer on this whole deal is that these the cocoons are still here, and as you can see, a pretty dark colored one on my index finger here, and the dark color is the indicator that it's getting close to that point where the inhabitants of it will come creeping out. Here's another fairly dark colored one, and I'd like to think that all of them in here, any ones that we might stumble on, would be dark in color like that, meaning that they're pretty close to the point where they're going to be finished, and then we can kind of bless this collection of castings as truly done and having pretty much not no potential, but a pretty significantly reduced potential of yielding any further baby worms if we were to continue letting it have more time and whatnot. So all right, I think just by doing that, in a way, it did feel like I was gradually nudging things in that general direction. And I think earlier too, when we kind of opened up the spot where the food's going to go, we also gave it a little bit of pressure in this direction. So I think we've got room enough to pile in some nice fresh bedding, reset their feeding area, at the same time increase the overall space for them. But you know what? I don't have anything to put in here. I'm going to anticipate that even if there's leftovers of that carrot, that 4-week-old carrot now, even though it was pretty big, I'm going to assume that putting a little something more in here would probably make good sense. And I just thought that I got these cucumbers. I thought a couple cucumbers would be really cool. So I'm going to go get some cucumbers for these little guys. Geez, I'm just wondering if we might be able to just disturb these guys a little bit, just so that I can get a sense of how much of that carrot remains before I go upstairs to the refrigerator to get them, you know, 1 cucumber, 2 cucumbers. I would have thought that I would have found a piece of this carrot by now. I mean, last time it was still the whole thing. Yep, I think this, yeah, this has got to be it, right? This pasty orange substance in my hand. Not a lot, but I can't believe that that would be all of it. The thing was like, had to be this long, so there's got to be at least a little bit more of it, especially if that chunk right there was that large. What the heck? Did they really eat it all up? The other stuff that was put in here 10 days ago was worm chow, just so that they've got other things besides that carrot to nibble on, not to mention all this nice bedding too. So even though we're going to put more bedding in the interest of increasing the overall volume of their abode, they don't really need it, I don't think. I just want to give them nice roomy space to stretch out into, if you know what I mean. So I'm going to take a short break right now, head upstairs, and we'll be done with this shortly. Besides the cucumbers, I just couldn't resist grabbing this filter with the coffee in it. And like they got last time, I'm going to be sprinkling a little bit more of my worm chow. As long as I've still got some left, I'm going to have to finally make a little bit more. The stuff that we're adding more of today is the same as what you see in here already. It's the pre-made bedding that I make. Consists of shredded paper, shredded newspaper basically, and all kinds of other paper really. Paper bags and printer paper. You name it. And into it goes leaves and shredded cardboard too. Luckily I've got a shredder that's quite capable of going through thick cardboard and many sheets of paper, should that be the challenge of the day. But luckily it's a pretty sturdy, heavy-duty shredder that I can process lots and lots of this beautiful bedding with pretty quickly. It looks like a pretty cool bedding to lay down for them on the bottom here. Something else that's coming in is going to be, I guess at this point this would be the second application of this BTI mosquito dunks solution. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit in here and there. I know we've been striving to see this material out here dry and make it less and less interesting for the worms to hang out in it. But I'd really like for this BTI to be all over the place so that hopefully it breaks the whole cycle there of the fruit flies that are always hanging out in my systems lately, and it's becoming a little bit annoying. So I thought that these 2 cucumbers would be a pretty nice little treat here. It did seem like stuff in here might benefit from moisture, so between the BTI solution and those cucumbers, which are to a large degree moisture or water basically, should be a pretty nice combination, along with a little bit of this. But before we sprinkle that in, you know, we got this nice new filter that can take over now as our new feeding zone indicator. Why don't we use up this old one? Down here is further bedding. I guess here I am using up my nice clean hand for dirty worm work. I guess as long as I keep 1 or 2 fingers clean so I could turn the camera off when I'm done filming, I'm okay. Just seems to me like, you know, shredding up the paper small is the way to go. Alright, I think all we've got left to do here is to include a little bit of this yummy worm chow. And I just can't seem to resist grabbing a little bit more of this pre-made bedding over here. You know why? Because my hands are dirty already anyway. What do I care? Is the tip of my pinky at least clean? Ay, ay, ay. As long as I can just turn the camera off, I'll be okay. Alright. I think we should just sort of spread out and level this whole feeding area out a little bit. We've got a nice new section there, but I'd really like for the new section to have a little bit of better cover down there. Is that more carrot? It sure looks like it. Orangish material smearing all over the place. Let's get that down there too. So either way, that carrot did a heck of a job, and it's pretty amazing 28 days later to still see pieces of that in here. Good job, wormies. Alright, and it's kind of interesting too to still see these remnants of these little partition cardboards that had been placed in here. On day one they went in here full of holes so as not to become real obstacles, but they did really serve as sort of barriers to keep the really nice castings free of all this bits of paper and stuff. So I think we're more or less done here. What do we got left? We just got to get this thing covered up back in our particular little fashion here so that the interesting area over here where the food and everything is continues to recirculate its moisture content. And I keep telling myself how I'm tempted to, you know, really let this stuff over here dry so that the worms really exit. But it's really just the presence of those cocoons, you know. And if at some point my buddy comes knocking and says, hey, give me the castings, I think I'm just going to oblige him, and there probably won't be a video about it. So the next time we see this bit, it could just be castingless with a whole bunch of worms at that point looking for a new home, and then if that's the case, then we'll take it from there. Alright everyone, I've definitely got some cleaning up to take care of around here and putting stuff away, but I'm not going to waste your time with that. That stuff's boring. Before I go though, let me quickly say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. Alright everyone, have a great day. Thanks so much for watching. Bye now.